Okay, well, good morning, good afternoon, maybe good evening if you're like me, you're in Europe or further east. Welcome to this webinar. It's my first time actually using LinkedIn Live, so expect a few glitches. I'm actually not quite sure that everything is working as it should be, but I hope so. I hope that you can um, see me and hear me correctly. So for today, we will spend around 30 minutes together. I will try to discuss a little bit how ICS environments are changing. And after that, I will talk a little bit about my training because I have a new training because ICS environments are changing. And then, of course, we'll launch the CTF because I have a fun CTF for you. It's an easy one. And also, I'm available for any questions or comments. So I do not know how it works exactly with LinkedIn Live again, but I think that you should be able to post some comments and I should be able to see them on my screen. We will see about that. Okay, so, okay, now you should see the slides as well, in addition to myself. So yes, the webinar is called As the Training from PLCs to the Cloud. And um, yeah, the reason is PLC talk more and more to the cloud, sometimes directly, sometimes indirectly, but that's something to take into account. Um, Maybe before going further, I need to introduce myself a little bit. So my name is Arnaud Soulier. I'm French. You probably can tell by the accent. Um, my day job is senior manager at Wavestone. Wavestone is a large consulting company. I've been working there for my whole life, so 16 years of experience. And at Wavestone, I'm part of the industrial cybersecurity team. So basically, my day job is to do consulting on ICS environments. And my specialty is more on the assessment part. So not that much on the consulting, but really assessing. I started as a pen tester. I started working as a pen tester in 2010. I spent 10 to 12 years inside of what we call the pen testing team. But since 2012, I started working on ICS. So 2012, that's like 1 year after Stuxnet. And of course, my first assignment was linked to Stuxnet. So I did more and more ICS. And inevitably, it was now 4 years ago, maybe, when Wavestone decided to have a dedicated team for ICS cybersecurity. I joined this newly formed team. And so now we are I think a little bit more than 100 consultants dedicated to industrial cybersecurity and product cybersecurity. So, in addition to my day job, I have a night job and a weekend job and a holiday job, which is training. I teach technical ICS training. I started in 2015 at Hack in Paris. So that was my first training. And I did decide to create my own training because I was not really satisfied with what was existing on the market at the time. I felt that it was a little bit too focused on individual component, and there was no, holistic view of what an ICS is, how the component interact together, etc., etc. So in my training, there is no PLC firmware reversing or stuff like that, but you get a good understanding on how all those small components do work together. In addition to that, I try to be a regular speaker at cybersecurity conferences like Black Hat, DEF CON. With some of my colleagues, we do a lot of workshops. So we create environments to help people get a bit more knowledgeable about ICS. Okay, and so this year will be my sixth year teaching at Black Hat Las Vegas. Now, let's take a few minutes to discuss why I'm saying ICS cybersecurity is changing. And I'm trying to keep track of LinkedIn at the same time, which is not easy. Um, so yes, why ICS cybersecurity is changing? Well, it's quite simple. Um, we used to say industrial systems are used to be isolated, they are not anymore. Well, yes, that's been the case for quite a long time. I started working in ICS almost 15 years ago, and they were already not isolated. But what is changing is, I would say that the level of connectivity, the directness, let's say, of connectivity, and the fact that IT, OT, which used to be separate parts of an environment, they tend to be a little more blurry, and it's hard to say, okay, is this IT, is this OT, especially in manufacturing, for example. Yes, energy, oil and gas, it might be a little bit different, but quite frankly, in manufacturing, pharmaceutical, it's hard to say this is hard IT, hard OT. No, it's a little bit blurry. So maybe to explain myself a little bit more, I have this the first diagram. That's one of the first slide of my training usually, because you start talking about what is an ICS, you need to take a look at a network diagram. It's not intended to be like a full exhaustive diagram of everything that can be on the network, but it's a first look at the main parts and the main components of an industrial control system. So on the right side, you have the field devices, sensors, actuators. Those devices, um, uh, historically, they are not connected. Those are not, intelligent devices. It's dumb devices. They are only electrical. Sensor gives you an electrical signal based on a physical property like a temperature, a pressure, while the actuator receives an electrical signal and performs an action like turning on a motor, opening, closing a valve, etc. And those devices, well, we need to be able to interact with lots of them. And that's the role of the PLC. So usually you have the PLCs here. Um, those are, again, legacy or standard PLC. So it's a hardware PLC that is wired to sensors and actuators. You also have here small local HMI. So that's how to say that it's usually a small touch screen that allows you to see what is going on with the industrial process and maybe interact a little bit, like start a batch sequence or stop it or abort a sequence. And so this allows you to have like a limited uh, impact on the ICS in a geographic way. Each PLC usually handles a sub part of an ICS of a production line. The HMI, it's the same. It only controls a small part of the overall process. So that's why, in addition to the PLCs, the HMI, you also have the supervision network. For simplicity's sake, I'm going to say SCADA, even if there are different types of supervision, but I'm going to say SCADA. And so the SCADA itself is composed of a few devices. You have operator HMIs, that's like Windows workstations with a specific application. SCADA servers that are communicating with the PLC, exchanging data. Historian, engineering workstation that programs the PLC, etc., etc. And you also have, of course, the corporate network. I always put the corporate network as part of an ICS diagram because um, it's been a long time since I've seen industrial control systems that does not exchange data to some extent with the corporate network. Okay, so that is I would say, the legacy vision. So you have this ICS, the corporate network, and they are separated. As you can see here, it's an abstract vision. It's not a technical diagram. There's no firewall. There's no routing equipment. So it's just to understand the several parts that play a role, let's say, in the overall ICS. Um, but that is changing. That is changing quite fast because today, if we take a look at, let's say, a more modern vision of an ICS, and when I say modern, it doesn't mean that it's the future, it's in 10 years. In some industries, it's already the case. Maybe it has already been the case for 5, 10 years. So I think it's time that we discuss what a modern or current ICS looks like. So as you can see on the field devices, we still have the sensors and the actuators. We still need to interact with big, heavy ICS equipment. That's for sure. That doesn't change. However, in addition to having sensors and actuators wired to the PLC, we might have connected sensors, um, or connected actuators, which is something I've not seen yet, but I'm quite sure I will find some at some moment. So, connected sensors, they are not directly wired using to a PLC. They are usually communicate with some kind of gateway, and the protocols might be of different types. Um, you may have heard of LoRa or LoRaWAN. It's a big IC, protocol for for IoT devices, and it also is quite frequent to see that in IIoT, industrial IoT. And so basically, the connected sensors, instead of going to the PLC, then to the SCADA server, then being displayed on the operator HMI, connected sensors usually they go to their gateway. So it might be a LoRa gateway or any kind of gateway, and this gateway usually um, connects the sensors directly to an external interface. So depending on whether you have your own LoRaWAN network or if you're using a public LoRaWAN network, the architecture is quite different. But the reality is the same. It's something that has an impact on your process, maybe not a direct impact because a connected sensor will not directly modify the process, but it will still give you an information that you will use to make an informed decision. And so, yes, the connected sensors will go to the gateway and then usually to the cloud, where your own or maybe a third party IIoT management platform will gather all the data, probably calculate some trends, and then um, give you some the results of some calculation and will give you an aggregated vision of all your connected sensors. And so you get that directly from an external platform using a web interface, for example. So it does bypass the whole PLC SCADA server because it goes directly from the connected sensor to the cloud, and then you get the data from the cloud using any kind of standard web browser most of the time. What we see also is that, so in this production network, I put here our edge gateway. So again, instead of having the data going to from the sensors to the PLC to the SCADA server to the historian, you might have, because it's easier, because some part of your process is located far away, you might have like an edge gateway that pushes data to the cloud using, I do not know, MQTT, for example, to AWS. And then again, the data is gathered on the supervision network directly from AWS. So you bypass your own local network to get the data. I also wanted to emphasize the fact that PLCs as well are changing. We now have, and we've had that for several years, soft PLCs. That means software PLC. So it's basically a PLC that runs in a container and that runs on any kind of Linux machine or VM, but it's quite frequent to see that as Docker or Kubernetes pods. So a lot of changes are happening directly here on the production network. Likewise, a supervision network will definitely be connected to some cloud capabilities to perform, high-level analytics, AI, machine learning to try to make the process more efficient. Okay, so that is the big change. And I think in terms of threat model, you do have lots of new attack, or I would say it's not only about attacks. Actually, it's also about resilience. So you have a lot of new scenarios in which your process might be uh, not working at all, or maybe just in a degraded way, so not at the full pace, etc., etc. Okay, so those are the main changes that I see. Of course, part of the devices of the supervision network might also be lifted to the cloud. That's something that we see. The SCADA servers, maybe not, but some of the calculation, so servers dedicated to calculate trend, they do not have to be on site. So yes, that's also some things that I see, and that they do change a lot the threat model of ICS. So now I want to spend a few minutes talking about the training. So it's a 4-day training, like all of my trainings at Black Hat. And one of the the very important things for me, maybe because I started as a pen tester, is that I strongly believe that you cannot hack or and you cannot secure something if you do not understand how it works. That's why in my training I have a lot of labs and hands-on session to really try to push for people to really get an understanding on how it works. Even if that's not a skill that you will use in your everyday life, uh, learning by doing is way more efficient in my personal experience than just having some slides. That's also the right time to say that I will not be the sole teacher for the training. I'm happy to announce that my colleague Alexandrine will also join me as a co-trainer for this training in Vegas. So Alexandrine, as she's a colleague of mine and a friend of mine, of course. We know each other for quite some time. We do teach training together on a regular basis because we work with a French training company called HS2, and we do 2 training sessions each year together. Alexandrine brings a different profile to the training. As mentioned, I'm more on the assessing part, and Alexandrine brings a vision about um, how to say that uh, um, ICS CISO, for example. That's a position that she hold, acting CISO as a consultant for many years. Uh, Being in charge of managing large cybersecurity programs for some of our big clients. And she's also an ISA 62443 expert. So that's also like a standard or regulation way of thinking that may not have. So I'm really happy because that brings another perspective to the training, especially for the questions or um, for when we might have some different vision on some of the stuff, and it's always interesting to have to bring that field experience, not on being the assessor, but being the people that need to implement the action plan. So that's really interesting. So I'm really happy to announce that. Then for the program of the training, so I have 4 slides, one for each day. It's pretty much packed, but at Black Hat trainings, there are pretty dense days. I think it's probably 9 to 6. So it's quite. We have some time, so it might be a little bit tiring for the attendees. So the day one, it's the foundations. Okay, so understanding the landscape. So spending way more time that we just did on the architecture, on the component, discussing the difference between IT and OT. Alexandria and myself giving feedback on what we see on the field, what are the true difficulties on how to secure ICS. And then very quickly, we move on to a hands-on exercise because I do not want to spend too much time doing like a theoretical vision. No, we need to move to the exercise. Here, the first exercise will be about programming a PLC because it's one of the core component of ICS. So I think it's interesting. So we program a PLC using a simulator that's from Schneider Electric. Then we use the main ICS protocols, Modbus, S7, OPCUA, MQTT. So we use client to connect to PLC simulators and to really understand what we can do with those protocols. And then we deep dive inside of the PLCs or the controllers. So we discuss advanced feature and how we can hack PLCs, either by using standard interfaces like HTTP, FTP, or more undocumented features. And we also take a look at the difference between standard PLC and modern PLC, like soft PLC, hybrid PLCs. I'm not going into all the details, but we also do perform exercises with the codices. And last topic of the day is discussing SCADA and DCS, 2 types of process supervision, and also performing exercise on how to attack them, how to secure them. Then, of course, we move on to the next day, IT meets OT. So we talk about what it means to assess an ICS network. What can we do? What shouldn't we do? That's also a very important question. And then we discuss a topic, and some people ask, why do you talk about Active Directory in an ICS training? Well, it's probably the most important topic. Of course, PLC, it's the core component, but the attacks, they will be coming on the Windows machines and the Active Directory, that's for sure. So we need to discuss that. So we perform exercises on how to attack, but also we discuss what are the solutions to try to secure when we use Active Directory in ICS environments. Then we also discuss the cloud because as much as Active Directory is important for ICS on-prem, the cloud adds another layer of possible vulnerability and attack path. So even if you do not need to be a cloud expert, it's important to have some good technical notions of what the cloud is, what are the attack path. So we discuss SD-WAN, Zero Trust, and then we perform exercises on AWS. Okay, so we perform exercises on identity and access management, S3, EC2, and then we do some pen testing exercise, so privilege escalation. So we have several scenarios to move from a low privilege account to a more privileged account. And that's really important because the same way Active Directory is targeted, the cloud infrastructure is targeted, and it's also sometimes something that is more exposed. And then we move on to day 3 and 4, and on each of those days you have a CTF. So really, it's almost fully hands-on those 2 days. So day 3, we start the day by a topic that I really like. It's secure PLC code. So we try to discuss how writing secure code can improve um, protection, but also detection for ICS. And we have a few examples also to do. So we will modify some real PLC code and see how we can detect some attacks with that. And then we move on to the what I call the legacy ICS capture the flag, but it's actually a standard ICS capture the flag. You start from a machine in a corporate network, and you need to find your way to an ICS network, and you need to find a way to control a train and a robotic arm. So those are simulated. Each one of you will have its own environment in the cloud. So that's like 14 VMs each. And it's really from end to end, from nothing up to impacting the ICS. So it's really interesting, and it's going to take us 5 to 6 hours to complete. Also, when I say capture the flag, the idea is not to find a winner. The idea is that everyone gets all the flag. You know, I give hints and solutions on a regular basis, so everyone gets all the flags. Then for the last day, first part in the morning, we'll discuss OT detection. What are the strategy? What works? What doesn't work? And we will also perform exercises. And that's a whole new module. I'm really proud of this one. And it's how to test your OT detection, especially using MITRE Caldera, which is a tool that allows you to automate some technical tests, and you can use that to perform some how to say that, some acceptance test on your OT detection. So it's super interesting. And then we move on to the last topic, which is modern cloud connected CTF. So it's a whole different setup from the day before. It's another hardware. And this time, again, you start from the internet, no prior information, and you find your way up to the moment at which you are able to impact a real physical ICS environment. So this one is shared for all the people attending. And so you will physically see what you're actually doing on the ICS. So it's also quite interesting, probably 5 to 6 hours as well. But it's really end-to-end attack on an ICS, and not using the standard path, really using attack paths that are specifically linked to modern technologies in use in ICS. So again, I'm really excited for this one. Usually it's a big hit. I already mentioned that, but it's probably 70+% hands-on, a lot of exercises, and also I worked quite a lot so that you can reach everything from a web browser. You do not need to have like a terabyte of disk to use all the VMs. No, I put all of that in the cloud. Each one of you gets its own VM, and you just use a web browser to access the VM. It's way more simple, and quite frankly, that prevents a lot of troubleshooting with people that use different, virtualization layers like Hyper-V, VirtualBox, VMware. So it's way easier. You just need a laptop with a decent web browser, and you're good to go. So who should attend the training? Well, it's it's really designed. I designed it. I come from IT. I have no shame in saying that. I have like an IT background, and over the past almost 15 years, I slowly got more knowledge on OT, and I think that's definitely possible to do. So I usually have different population attending the training, and the differences in those populations is also very interesting when we have a discussion, when we have questions from attendees. So I usually have some pen testers and assessors. They are knowledgeable IT. They want to move on to ICS, or maybe their company has some ICS, and they say, okay, we need to be more knowledgeable about how to assess and attack those ICS. That's the first part. We also have people trying to defend, so blue teamers, people working for the SOC, the CERT, or even people working in the architecture teams from cybersecurity, trying to understand how OT works because they need to manage projects impacting OT. And also, and I'm always really uh, happy to see that when we have those type of people not coming from cyber at all, people that are automation engineers, and they need to understand cyber and also OT cyber, and that's really interesting for them because they see a whole different mindset than theirs. It's also interesting for me when we discuss because they can give you some additional difficulties that they have that you as a consultant you cannot find. So it's really interesting. The only prerequisite is to be a little bit technical, I would say. If you do not understand IP addresses, ports, if you do not understand Windows or Linux command lines, uh, you're going to have a hard time following the exercises. But apart from that, you do not need to be an OT expert. You do not need to be a pen tester to attend the training. So I would say it's pretty large in terms of possible audience. Okay, so the last part was ask me anything, but again, I do not know the cloud platform, and I think also there's, uh, from what I've seen, a very big delay between what I see on my screen and by the time it happens on your screen. So I think that we probably have like a few minutes of delay. So I do not want to wait a few minutes for your questions to come. So if you have any questions, put them in the comment. I'll try to answer that later on, but I do not think that it's the right moment to ask the questions. And so we arrive to the last part of the training, which is the CTF launch. Okay, so in order to promote the training, I wanted to have a small CTF. It's not meant to be complex or something that you will work on for 2 weeks. It's bite-sized, so there are some easy challenges. It doesn't mean that it's going to be solved in 5 minutes either, but quite frankly, anyone that spends the time should be able to compete in the CTF. So the way it will work is that I decided to have two different prices. The first one I already received it. It's here. Let me see. Yes. So it's actually a Schneider PLC. So the first player to capture all the flags will get this PLC. I will ship it to wherever you want. Um, and since I didn't want it to be only like the first one, there will also be a draw. So I didn't receive it. It should arrive in France tomorrow, the Jetson Nano Dev Kit. And so someone amongst the people that have flagged everything will be drawn and will win this Jetson Nano Dev Kit. The idea was to have like PLCs and something more modern, like a NVIDIA Jetson Dev Kit that allows you to run small LLMs or maybe computer vision locally. So that was my main idea. And so yes, the CTF will probably run for a week. So I think that next week I will announce the winner on Wednesday. So the CTF should be open. You have the URL here. I will put that into the comments as well, of course. And I will try to show you quickly what it looks like. So